Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight for another Dhamma talk from Ayyā Somā. This night's topic will be on attachment and non-attachment. So welcome so far to Melinda and Ned and all our other friends who are watching behind the scenes, so to speak. So tonight we'll begin with chanting the Ratana Sutta, and you can find the link in the live chat if you'd like to follow along. And then afterwards, Ayyā Somā will guide us in some meditation and then share some words of Dhamma with us. So pass things over to Ayyā Somā.
All right, thank you, Bhante, and thank you all for joining us this evening. So we can start by paying homage to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yani bhutani samagatani bummani vayani vantarike sabeva bhuta sumana bhavantu atopi sakaca sunantu bhasitam tasmani bhutani sameta sabene tam karotamanusiya pajayam divacharato chaharanti ye balin tasmani nerakata pamata yang kinci vitam midavahuramba sage suvayam ratanam panitam nano samamati tathagatena idampi buddhe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu kayam viragam mamatam panitam yada jagasakya muni samahito natena dhammena samati kinchi dampi dhamme ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu yam buddha seto parivanayi sucim samadhimanam tarikanyamahu samadhina tena samona vijjati dampi dhamme ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu ye pugala tasatam pasata chattari etani yugani honti te dakineya sugata sasavaka ete sudinnani mahapalani idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu ye supayuta manasa dalhena kamino gotamasa sanamhi te patipata matam vigaihala hamutani putim bunjamana idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sacena suvati hotu
Yatinnatilo patavinsito siya chatu bivate via sampakampiyo tatupamam sapurisam vadami yo arya satchani avecha pasati idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sachena suvati hotu ye arya sachani vibhavayanti gambira panyena sudesitani Kinchapi te hunti busapamata na te bhavam matamam nadiyanti idampi sanghe ratanam panita metena sachena suvati hotu Sahava sadasana sampadaya taya sudhamma jahita bhavanti Sakaya diti vichiki chitancha silabatam vapiyarati kinchi Chatuhapaye chavipamuto chachavitanani abhabbokatu idampi sanghe ratanam panitam etena sachena suvati hotu Kinchapi sokamam karoti papakam kayena vacha udachetasava Abambo sota sapati chadaya abata di tapada sabuta idampi sanghe ratanam panita etena sachena suvati hotu vanapagumbe yata pusitage Mahanamase patamasmin gimhe Tatupamang dhammavaram adesayi Panagamim paramam hitaya Idampi buddhe ratanam panitam Etena sachena suvati hotu Varo varanyu varado varaharo anutaro dhammavaram nadesayi idampi buddhe ratanam panitam etena sachena suvati hotu Kinam Puranam Navam Nati Sambhavam Virata Chitta Yatrike Bhavasmim Te Kina Bija Virulhi Chanda Nipanti Dira Yatayam Padipo Idampi Sankhe Ratanam Panitam Etena sachena suvati hotu Yani bhutani samagatani Bhummani vayani vantarike Tathagatam deva manusa pujitam Buddham namassama suvati hotu Yani bhutani samagatani Bummani vayani vantarike Tathagatam deva manusa pujitam Dhammam namassama suvati hotu Yani bhutani samagatani Mani vayani vantarike Tathagatam deva manusa pujitam Sangham namassama suvati hotu Etena Satcha Vajjena Dukkha Vupasamentu Te. Etena Satcha Vajjena Bhaya Vupasamentu Te. Etena Satcha Vajjena Roga Vupasamentu Te.
All right. You can get into a comfortable position or into the least uncomfortable position that you can find. And you can rock your body from side to side if it's helpful. Making sure the back is upright. Once you think you've found a stable position, you can close your eyes or keep them slightly open if you're a bit tired. And take a few deep breaths. Emptying the mind out from all the worries and ideas and planning and stress. Allowing the mind to dwell for a few moments without doing anything. No thinking, no focusing, no concentrating, no nothing. Just being. And we can gently bring our attention to the breath. Watching calmly and attentively every in-breath and out-breath. letting go of any temptation to control the breath. And just letting it be and observing it, being fully present, knowing the process of breathing. Actively keeping the mind alert, watching every in breath and out breath. Knowing in every moment the quality of the breath, its characteristics, if it's short or long, if it's coarse or subtle. Without wanting for it to be any different than what it is. We're just present with what is. If it helps, we can anchor our attention to the tip of the nose by the nostrils. Watching carefully every single sensation that we're feeling at the tip of the nose. You can slowly expand our field of awareness to the whole body, looking at how the process of breathing is affecting the body. Looking at the belly, inflating and deflating at each in breath and out breath. At our arms slightly shifting naturally. At our chest slightly expanding in every moment and contracting. Remembering to arouse energy and concentration whenever the mind wants to run away and becomes unfocused. We use determination and observe our experience. Stay with our experience. meditation, we can spend a few moments looking at the quality of the mind, comparing it to our memory of how it was at the beginning. And most likely we can see how much more relaxed and peaceful it is, how much more wholesome it is. And we can treasure this memory for the future.
Thank you, Ayyā Somā, and welcome to some other friends joining in, including Mary, John, Lucas, and Gita. So good to see everyone. So at this time, Ayyā Somā will be sharing some words of Dhamma, and if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the live chat at any time, and Ayyā will address them at the end of the talk.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. So tonight we have a few cameras from Stan, both visuals and sound effects. So he's being colored up again due to his skin condition that is getting back at him again. He goes on and off with lots of different types of dukkha. So that's what you're hearing in the background. So here at Empty Cloud, since the beginning, actually, we've somehow, well, Empty Cloud and also the Rockways on my house, so we can say at Buddhist Insights, since its inception, we've always taken care of numerous beings, ourselves and others, different types of sentient beings, human beings, non-human beings, different stages of health, sometimes in great health conditions, sometimes in less than optimal health conditions. We try our best. It's been a bit of an intense month on so many different levels. There's been a lot of happiness, lots of ordinations, different stages of ordinations. And also a lot of sadness at the same time for the death of some of our friends. Probably a few of you know already, or a lot of you, maybe all of you know already, that we lost two of our hens, that are rescue hens that were spent the past almost 3 years here living with us. And it happened actually in a pretty natural way, the circle of life. So hens are prey and they are predators. We have lots of different predators here at the new grounds of this monastery. So the foxes are very, very hungry all the time because us humans, we tore apart most of, actually, as Antoinette was saying, we gentrified their natural habitat. So we came and we removed all the forests, we removed all their sources of nourishment, and pretty much every living being here is starving to death, the wildlife. So they like to come around in the monastery, especially during lunchtime. And when there were the hens, also different other times of day, the hawk in the sky, the foxes and raccoons and from the land. Very, very interesting. So the big insight tangible insight on the First Noble Truth of how it not only applies to us, but it applies to every single sentient being. There is dukkha, that is the nature of samsara, there is suffering. And every single being in samsara, when you observe them, just like us, does not want to suffer. Yet, we constantly hurt one another and we constantly suffer. It's this endless cycle. Sometimes with awareness, sometimes with less awareness, sometimes with intentionality, sometimes with less intentionality. It's been a very humbling, actually, experience in the past couple of days of reflections on so many different levels. We brought our orphan from her sister's hen, Yama, to a nice, lovely Buddhist, not Buddhist, but they might as well be Buddhist, animal sanctuary, a vegan sanctuary that is here in New Jersey, Tamerlan sanctuary, where they take care of a lot of farm animals, and they kindly offer to give a home to Yama, who was very lonely and wanted to have some other hen friends. And it was interesting because Yama was the first animal, first sentient being that I took care of in my life, that I stopped taking care of before their natural death. And it was such a difficult decision to make. So difficult on so many different levels, really doing a lot of work in the mind of analyzing the intentions behind the actions and the intentions behind also the thoughts that were rising in my mind. So was when we decide for others, when we have the responsibility of others, how do we make our decisions? How do we make them? What are they based upon? Is it the welfare of others, or is the welfare of others mixed with other intentions? And the reality is that until we are enlightened, it's always the latter. And it's just pretty much to what kind of degree are we aware of it? So I was using humbling as a term before when talking about these reflections, because it gave me actually a lot of insight in having compassion for my parents, for example, or for anyone who takes care of anyone. And when we think about people who have taken care of us, whether it's our parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, relatives, we normally can be very judgmental. We can have a lot of lists of what they've done wrong and how they could have done better. But the question is, are we capable of actually doing better? So I was reflecting a lot on that. And, the truth is that actually if we are in the conditions of our parents, we would make exactly the same decision. And it's because the decisions that any single being makes is based on so many different factors, so many different conditions exactly that produce the result. So if we have been in the past, which certainly we have according to the Buddhist teachings, if we have been in those particular situations, we have done exactly the same, we have made exactly the same choice in the past. And the reason we do that also, it's because we are not terribly aware of what are the conditions that come into being. So we go about it in a very instinctual way. So when I was going about decisions to make, whether we were keeping our friend Yama here, or we were giving her a home with a neighbor who had some other chickens, or if we were perhaps looking at some other people who had different situations on Facebook, or there was this other sanctuary or this other refuge place, or perhaps we could have like put also contemplate the process of getting they have these hen diapers where then the chickens can actually like spend some time inside and be more supervised, and then they can go outside. So many different hypotheses, not one solution, but an infinite amount of solutions. The power of the practice, I realized, is to actually be able to break down all these scenarios in terms of not what we rationally think is good or beneficial, but rather checking our motives, checking our reasoning behind it, checking our craving, checking our attachment. And oftentimes, especially with this last word, attachment, it can be very charged. And I remember in the past, a lot of mothers were asking, well, how can I even be sane or healthy to have children and not be attached to them? How can we care for our children? How can we care for our sisters? How can we care for anyone if we don't have any attachment to them? And I think the question actually that they were, the more, rather than the question, the nuance or the more appropriate word, at least from a Buddhist perspective, for that is not attachment, but rather caring. And caring is not synonym with attachment. Loving is not synonym with attachment. Actually, attachment, if we think of anything, like if I pick this up and it gets attached to my finger, to my hand, will it be a pleasant sensation? A lot of kids put like ice cubes or whatever on their mouth and then they get attached. Very difficult to detach them. Is it a pleasant sensation? If we think of the process, like what actually it rises in the mind, I think it's a perfect translation, attachment. Because it gives us both the idea of something that we're doing and also carries that connotation of unpleasantness. As opposed to caring and loving in and of itself is something very pure, very wholesome. From the vegetables or whatever we are growing. And we just call them plants. So we think that we only need to take care of the plants. But the weeds are actually strangling the fruits of our garden, the vegetables of our garden, impeding them to grow. So our job with Buddhist practice is to really really understand, first of all, conceptually, what are these weeds? No different than taking a botany book and looking what are the weeds that grow in New Jersey. Actually, these days they have even wonderful apps that you can like take a picture of any little plant and on your iPhone, and in a second it tells you the plant, and it also tells you whether it's a weed, invasive weed, or if it's a great native pollinator or whatever it is when it's soon grown. We want to cultivate, we want to be our own app in terms of our experience, and quickly understand, quickly grasp and see, this is really not beneficial. This is attachment. And this is actually something beneficial. This is wholesome. This is caring. This is loving. This is metta. This is wishing for all being to be happy. And that's when we can start getting closer and closer to an appropriate response. So had I gone only by attachment, it's likely the chicken would have had a diaper and would have hung out in the monastery for the unhappiness of the chicken and of my fellow residents. They're all like nodding. No, the chicken with the diaper, no. And they're like, very bad. If I had let go a little bit of the attachment, then she would have been perhaps in the cage most of the time and would have gone, oh, peace of mind. Oh, great. I can come and say hello. And she would have been depressed, not happy, not being able to roam around. But at least I could have the pleasure and happiness to see her every day at my leisure. And then letting it go a little bit to the neighbor, letting it go a little bit. And so you let it go, you let it go, you let it go. And in the end, you realize that the best, sometimes it's actually relinquishing, really understanding that sometimes you actually cannot take care of someone, and that there are people who can take care of someone better than you can, that have the right conditions for that to happen. And it hurts and it's painful, perhaps, because there is that attachment, because there is that grasping, that wanting for things to be our way. Is that selfishness and wanting for someone to be in our realm of experience. May they be happy with me. Not may they be happy in and of itself, but may they be happy with me. Or may they be happy when I see them. Or may they like me more than everyone else. When we went to Tamerlane, actually, the Yama loved straight away her new caretaker, Viola, who also happens to be Italian. There was a little bit of jealousy appearing in my mind. It's again, that attachment going, I took care of you for almost 3 years. All that time and effort feeding you, looking after you, all these tears shed and all these worries, and bam, you just like meet someone for 2 seconds and you're like right there, talk to my hand or talk to my whatever it's called. She doesn't have a hand, like the and when you start realizing the workings of the mind, all you can do is laugh about yourself. And I was like, are you serious right now? How can you be jealous? You should be rejoicing that she's happy. You should be rejoicing that after weeks spent in depression, she's actually finally picking up and looking at the other hands and being in the farm, not in the suburbs with all the mowing and leaf blowers every 2 seconds, but rather in a place that is calm, peaceful, where she's protected, where she's with fellow chickens. And she was instinctively getting at peace with it. Yeah, this morning Bhante Suvana was going through the Ratapala Sutta, the first part of the Ratapala Sutta, and he was talking about, we went through the passage where the parents of Venerable Ratapala were not too pleased of him going forth, and all the sort of things that they tried to go, the ordeal that, or the impediments that they were trying to put in order for their son not to go forth. And it's so easy to judge other parents. It's easy to judge it in a sutta, but it's so difficult to catch it in ourselves. So difficult. But as soon as we catch it, thanks to the practice, and soon we're able to let go, the sooner we're able to relinquish, and the sooner we're able to get closer and closer to this unconditional happiness, to realizing truly what unconditional love means, what unconditional happiness is. What is it like to be an arahant, who doesn't have to go through all these hours and days of trials and tribulations of like grief and despair, but has already developed an open heart that instantly knows what the appropriate response is, goes automatically for the welfare of others. What a beautiful thing to do. What a beautiful state of being. And whenever we have these moments, even if it's difficult in practice as we go along the path, the more we have glimpses, once again, of Nibbana. And the more we can really solidify, reaffirm our vows, and direct ourselves in the right direction. And so non-attachment doesn't become this, removing the ice and or stripping the Band-Aid from our skin, this sort of painful thing that we need to strip off. It doesn't become a torturous practice, but it has more the quality of taking a shower and having the pleasantness of just having water drawn off. And it's so humbling, I have to say, to have these vows as a monastic and to really go forth, not just for my own sake, but for the sake of all beings. Constantly taking care of so many beings, both physically and mentally and spiritually. Because only through this process we can actually understand our mind, and we can see how we're all in this together. Doesn't matter distinctions, it doesn't matter where we're from, it doesn't matter the different shapes and forms that we usually get hung up with, the different characteristics of individuality that we have. Doesn't matter if you're Jamaican, if you're Italian, if you're a wandering monk or an intellectual monk, or whatever it is. At the end of the day, we're all dealing with the same suffering. And so is Dan, the cat, as you can hear the soundtrack, going through a lot of suffering, a lot of aversion, a lot of dukkha. And Venerable Pamutta now is scratching him to relieve him a little bit from suffering out of compassion. He probably would want to do something else right now, but like meditate, but he has to listen to me talking and the cat scratching. So that's all I think that comes to mind tonight. Perhaps if people have any reflections, and we can start a little bit of conversation rather than me having a little bit of a stream of consciousness.
Thank you, Ayyā Somā. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And welcome to a couple other friends joining in, including Elaine and Putrika. So again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them into the live chat, and we'll address and discuss them. And John says, congrats, Ayyā Somā, on your ordination. Why is Stan wearing a funnel? Didn't catch that part.
Thank you. Yes, I am also very happy. So very happy that I've taken full ordination. So has Venerable Pamutta, by the way, taken full ordination this month. And the reason why everybody's talking about my ordination is that it's a little bit more rare to have female fully ordained monks than male ordained monks. We're kind of like a species in the stage of extinction. So you're like, oh wow, oh look at that, like incredible creature. Ooh, oh. So there's a lot of talking, but fundamentally our vows are the same. Fundamentally our purpose is the same. So we should also acknowledge that Venerable Pamutta is going forth. And also Bhante Sumana is going forth, a different type of ordination, but still extremely valuable and noble, and worthy of congratulating.
And Stan.
Oh, and Stan has the funnel because bad karma. Torturing so many sentient beings. We love Stan, but just like we love the fox, predators have a really difficult life, and they can't help themselves from constantly making bad karma, constantly killing sentient beings. So we are all thinking that he's getting ready to have a human rebirth, so he's exhausting his bad karma. So it's coming, flaring up, so he's scratching. It's also interesting because whenever he attacks creatures, he gets more itchy. So I think he found out that there are some crickets that are coming inside the monastery because he's obsessed with this part of the monastery where we think there are crickets. I see my fellow companions nodding. And since he's gone to that room multiple times, keeps on scratching, instant karma. But he can't help himself, so we understand that. So we try to impede. We try to help him with restraining himself whenever we can, but a lot of times we can't. So he goes and kills. May he have a good rebirth.
And Gita says, thank you, Bhikkhuni Soma, for sharing Dhamma. And Elaine also says, congrats to you both on your full ordination. I rejoice in you both going forth and wishing that you both achieve enlightenment in this lifetime.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And then lots of congratulations from Gita as well to Bhante Sumano and Pamutta. May we all awaken to the bliss of Nibbana.
And all of you as well,
yes.
Including Antoinette, our lovely president.
And then John also asks, what's the actual problem? Is it a rash? Is there something he can recommend or get for Stan?
Fortunately, we can't really mess with other people's karma, so he's the owner of his karma. What we can do is just help him. So we all take care of him. He's got lots of different diagnoses, so he's got a lot of different conditions that are not quite curable, but they are containable. How do you say it? Maintenance mode. So we just keep an eye on him, and then once the situation will get better, which will, as it has in the past, he will be coneless again. But he's not happy to be with the cone. That's why he makes all that noise.
He's trying to get the cone off.
Yeah.
And Elaine says, "Come on, Aja and Stan, let's show some self-restraint. You stop killing, I'll stop eating junk food."
Or how about you stop eating junk food so you inspire him to stop killing?
And
lead by example, Elaine.
Yes. Mary says, "I sympathize with you, Ayyā Somā. I once had a cat with a brain tumor who became vicious, and I had to give him away."
Yeah, they're very similar animals to us. It's quite interesting because I never grew up with any contact with animals. So it's actually quite bizarre that all of a sudden in my 30s, I started taking care of all these different sentient beings. But maybe because actually I never really had any contact with animals and they were new to me, then I really started observing them thoroughly and actually kind of became obsessed with not necessarily the animal per se, but the way through which the species, like I did a lot of research, for example, on how cats, like the history of cats, how they got domesticated and how they relate society-wise, or chickens, how they relate. So I learned a little bit. I have a secret language with cat language with Stan that I learned based on the information on how cats communicate with one another. And similar to the chickens, so apparently people always make comments of how like I'm capable of teaching them little tricks like stand sits before being fed, or the chickens where it would come when called, things like that. But it's really interesting from Buddhist perspective to really see how all different sentient beings, once you learn their language and you learn their behaviors and you understand how they create their own societies, that you're removing all those sort of accessories, and at the core, you'll find exactly the same experience of us humans, and the same dukkha, and the same cause of dukkha, and the same ways of relating to dukkha, and the same actions, skillful actions, or skillful actions if they may be based on dukkha. And it's also very helpful, so understanding samsara, how we're relating, for example, with the fox now that she's killed two of our friends. We were making peace with the fox. At least I was. I offered her food the other day, our leftover breakfast. And I spent a lot of time actually watching her outside of the window as she was eating. And my mind was only full with compassion because I was realizing her state of being that was no different than mine, that all she wanted to do was to be happy and she didn't want to be hurt, but she didn't have the Dhamma. And even when we have the Dhamma, sometimes we make awful mistakes. When we don't have any guidance, we can make lots of mistakes. Even monastics make so many mistakes. I wish that as soon as we put robes on, boom, and we get it, and we're like, oh, perfect. But all we do when we put robes on is actually solidifying the aspiration, solidifying the vows, and really committing ourselves to eradicate greed, hatred, and delusion. But it's a process. It doesn't happen instantly. You got to work on it. So monasticism, the history of monasticism is not impeccable. This day, if you put Buddhist monk doing unskillful behavior, you'll find a lot of hits on Google. Why is that so? Because there's work to be done. There's a path. Yet none of these people who are making such mistakes want to suffer. So we're all foxes and we're all hens. And it's such a humbling realization, such a humbling experience. And it's beautiful to be able, it was really beautiful for me actually to have compassion for the fox, because I was very attached to my friend's chickens. And I have to say that whenever she was coming to attack the chickens, I was chasing her. I'm like probably known by my neighbors as a crazy weirdo. I'm running after the fox and yelling in Italian. Incomprehensible words. But sometimes while I was running after her in the past, so there was some hatred in my mind. It was like, oh, why do you have to do that? It wasn't purely, that I was doing it was a defense mechanism. So the fact that actually my mind had no hatred the other day was such an incredible gift of the path, and gave me the idea of how it can be possible when it will happen with other sentient beings, other humans. Venerable Ken Modralma, who's senior Tibetan bhikkhuni, incredibly compassionate woman. She shared with us once during the retreat how, as she was practicing and deeply doing all these deep contemplations on having compassion for one's own enemy. Her retreat had to be interrupted because she had to receive this call of people notifying her that her brother had just been killed. So all of a sudden, her enemy wasn't anymore something fictitious. A lot of times we can get very wrapped up with these ideas, these cute ideas. We perceive them as cute ideas in Buddhism. Like we start practicing metta and we do metta, oh yes, may everyone be happy. Possible people we don't like, or enemies that we haven't even met, but perhaps we read about in newspapers, but they haven't actually done something so strong and deep to us, to our actual body, or to the extension of our body, which is our immediate blood family. And all of a sudden she had that materialized in front of her. And she had a great relationship with her brothers. It wasn't like a tormented thing. It was something extremely difficult. And it's so beautiful the way that she talks about it, and how profound of a mark it made. And how she was actually able, thanks to the Dharma, to really practice, really dissect her emotional experience and really truly have compassion for the killer of her brother. And so I thought about that. That was what arose in my mind. I was like, I too can achieve that. I too can create the mind of a Buddha. We all have that capability. We just need to train ourselves with the teachings. And that's when we see that our aspiration, our vows, or precepts, whatever kind of shape and form we have as practitioners of the Dhamma, those are just instruments that propel us towards the same light, same result, same destination, but are not sufficient in and of itself. We really need to do the work. We really need to contemplate in every moment. Everything is a lesson, everything is a teaching. And then we start really understanding this. It doesn't become a lesson, it doesn't become a lecture, it doesn't become, oh, I studied chapter such and such of whatever book such and such. It doesn't become a multiple answer test. Check the right box. But it becomes something that we really fully understand. We see it for ourselves. We see our mind changing, shifting, becoming more wholesome, becoming more happy. And that's when we realize the power of these teachings. And when it becomes a living tradition, something that actually can be done in this lifetime.
Thank you. And John says, I'll dedicate my few merits to Stan and hope he makes a miraculous recovery.
Oh, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And Robin says, when you said we were all foxes and we were all hens, it was very beautiful. Thank you, Ayyā. And that seems like it was the last comment / question of the night. So unless there's anything else in a few more seconds, we'll have an early night here at the monastery.
Stan's making his cameo. Our fox hen cat.
So thanks everyone for joining us. And if you can, join us tomorrow morning for the second part of the Ratapala Sutta in the morning. And then in the evening, there will be monk chat where you can bring any lingering questions you have either from tonight or any other questions that come up in the course of the day. And if you're around during the weekend, we have our regular alms round at West Orange Farmers Market, outdoor meditation on Saturday at 3 p.m., and then another outdoor meditation on Sunday at 3 p.m., Introduction to Buddhist Meditation. So if you're around or don't mind traveling a little bit or a lot of it, feel free to stop by. But as always, good seeing everyone, and we can end with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And have a great night.